Hey, it's Paris. You know, I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thanks so much for joining. What a week. These weeks have been unbelievable with the news stories that are coming out on the economy, on politics. We're going to cover it all on the More Money Show. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate so many of the notes I get from people, so many of the emails. And when I run across people just on the streets of New York and people saying they listen to the More Money Show, it means the world to me. So thank you so much. We have great ratings. Thank you to John Katsimatidis, who is one of the sponsors of the show. And so let's get right into it. There's so much to cover. We have some great guests coming up later in the show. I want to start with this big story about what is happening with respect to Lisa Cook. She, of course, is the member of the Federal Reserve Board who is now alleged, and I'm going to capitalize that word, alleged to have committed mortgage fraud. And the question is whether she should stay on the Federal Reserve Board. I believe that everyone in this country is innocent until proven guilty. That is one of our major rights as an American. But the case against her looks very strong. And the latest development in this is that she has been, now the FBA has launched a formal investigation into the alleged mortgage fraud. Now, here is why this is important. And I'm sick and tired of people like Elizabeth Warren and Paul Krugman and others saying, oh, this is just a minor infraction and this should not disqualify her to be on the Federal Reserve Board. It absolutely should. If she did this, again, if she did this, then she cannot be on the Federal Reserve Board. And here is why, folks, because this is an important story. If someone commits mortgage fraud and she is alleged to have falsely claimed that this was going to, another house was going to be her principal residency, that is mortgage fraud. And that is the kind of fraud that many hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people committed during the huge housing crisis of 2006 and 2007 and 2008. And this is what torpedoed the economy and wrecked so many of our major financial institutions. It led to massive losses for American families. And mortgage fraud was at the center of the scandal. Now we have someone on the Federal Reserve Board who is guilty of that crime? No. They cannot continue to be on the Federal Reserve Board. I think Trump is right to call for her resignation. And let's get somebody on the Federal Reserve Board who is honest and trustworthy and is someone that is squeaky clean. Now, the other issue I wanted to bring up, and we'll talk a lot about these throughout the show, is this case against Google. The Justice Department went after Google for building a better mousetrap, and they alleged that they engaged in monopoly behavior. And the decision that came down by the federal judge was kind of a win for Google. It basically said you can keep Chrome, which is their browser, which, by the way, they bought, they developed it, they built it. Why should they have to sell it off? And luckily, the court said, no, you don't have to sell it off. But they did fine Google. They did come down against Google on some of these other monopolistic claims. And I'm here to tell you this is bad news. they're saying now that Google has to share its technology, its data with other rival firms. That's not America. This isn't kindergarten. This is not kindergarten. We had to share the blanket. Google built this. They were one of the most successful companies in the history of civilization. I know a lot of my conservative friends don't like Google because they believe that Google has discriminated against conservatives. And in some cases they have, although I have to say I've been working with Google a lot over the last 5 years. I think they've really improved their behavior. And I think that the bias against conservatives has finally been alleviated, maybe not entirely. But the point is, a private company should not have to turn over its private property. If we believe in free enterprise and private property and innovation, then this cannot stand. Now, I'm going to take a radical position here, and I know a lot of you, my listeners, will probably disagree with me, but some of you may agree with me on this. I think we should repeal the Sherman Antitrust Act, which passed, I think, back in 1912 or something around then. That act of alleging that American businesses are involved in monopoly behavior is crazy. They went after Standard Oil. They went after AT&T. They went after Ford. They went after all of our major companies, and their crime was to be a success. And in every single case where the FTC or the Justice Department has gone after an American company, remember they went after IBM, they went after Microsoft. What they do is they see a company that has become profitable, that is providing a service that the American people and people around the world want, and then they try to destroy it. That's the opposite of our free enterprise system. Of course, a company tries to beat its competition. It's like saying, that the New England Patriots, when they went, almost undefeated, that we have to break them up because they're too powerful. Winning is not a crime. Providing a service that people want is not a crime. And so I say, get rid of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The only people would be hurt by that, by getting rid of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The only people would be hurt, the lawyers, because the only people who make money on antitrust are lawyers. How much money did Google have to spend to defend itself? Tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars defending itself against this rapacious lawsuit against them. And of course, the government had to hire an army of lawyers to go after Google. That was paid for by you and me, the taxpayer. So lawyers made, hundreds of millions of dollars, and no consumers was left better off. I'm going to make one last point about this for you all to think about. And you can tell me if you think I'm wrong about this, because I want to hear back from you folks. But in every single instance, okay, they said Rockefeller, Standard Oil was a monopolist. No. The oil price fell every year that John D. Rockefeller created the oil industry. What about the railroads? Were there monopolies? No, they reduced the cost of transportation. What about AT&T? No, telecommunications costs fell. What about Google? No, how can Google be a monopoly? How can it be hurting consumers when it gives you their search engine for free? Google doesn't cost you anything, and they're saying Google is anti-consumer. I could go on and on with this. What about Apple? Apple has driven down the cost of iPhones. They used to cost $3,000. Now you can get an iPhone, depending on which model you get, for $300. So the price keeps falling and falling and falling. None of this is anti-consumer. We want great companies. We should not have our Justice Department suing our own companies. This is only benefiting China and the Europeans and other countries that are trying to take away our supremacy. By the way, we all own Google. We all own Apple. We all own Amazon. We all own NVIDIA. At least I do. They are part of our retirement plans. They are great American companies. They're highly profitable. I would agree with Donald Trump, who said, let's not tear down our great technology companies. Let's build them up and continue to be dominant in the world. It's the best way to beat China. It's the best way to beat our enemies, whether it's Iran, whether it's the other countries in the Middle East that are trying to kill us. If we are dominant economically, we win. Okay, so that's my message. Get rid of the Sherman Antitrust Act. That's my message today. We're going to be right back, folks. We got a full jam show. Stick with us. It's the More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend, and thank you so much for tuning in. The reason this radio station and this radio show are a success is people like you. So I very much appreciate you joining. I hope a weekend and get ready for football. You ready for some football? Because it starts this weekend. Let's get to it. I've got like 4 or 5 things I want to discuss with you, and I want you to think about, and I want to hear what you think about, because they are tough issues that sometimes divide us as conservatives, if you are a conservative, as I am. And I'm just going to go right through these. First of all, what do you make of the fact that Donald Trump lost in court on his tariffs? The court said that he does not have, this is a federal judge says that he does not have the authority to unilaterally impose tariffs. And I have to say, folks, I'm torn on this one. That's why I could go either way on this one. And I'm going to lay out both sides of the case, and you let me know what you think. And because it's going to be a big case. I think Trump said the other day it's going to be one of the most important Supreme Court cases in modern times. I think he's right about that. And it's a case about how much power we give to the executive branch and to the president. And I love this president, but I do believe in the importance of checks and balances in our system, which is something that preserves and protects our freedoms as Americans. And so what is going on here is that the Constitution is pretty clear, I would say concretely clear, on the power given to the president when it comes to taxation. So the Constitution, as I read it, says that all tax bills must begin in the House of Representatives, and a tax must pass Congress. In other words, the president does not have a unilateral authority to impose a tax. At least that's the way I read the Constitution. The question is whether the Congress, which has the taxation power, and by the way, tariffs, whether you like tariffs or don't like tariffs are taxes. A tariff is a tax on the things that you buy. And it's, some of that cost is imposed on the consumer, some of it is imposed on the manufacturer, but it is a tax. And so the issue is whether Congress had the authority to delegate taxation power to the president. In other words, they defer to the president and they said, we are going to delegate this power that rests with us to the president. And at issue here is whether Congress has the authority to do that. I'm very torn on this. And if anything, I do not think Congress should have that power. And if you think I'm being unreasonable here, if you're a Republican and conservative, as I am, imagine if Kamala Harris had been elected president, God forbid, and she said, well, we have a climate crisis, so we're going to have to, triple our energy costs so we can save the planet. She said, I have an emergency power to do that. Well, conservatives like me would be shouting from the rafters, no, that's illegal. That's unconstitutional. You can't do that. You can't just unilaterally impose taxes on the American people. And so, but yet Trump says, I have the power to, because of an emergency, and it may well be an emergency, that the president can impose the tariffs. So you can see there's 2 sides to this. I'm kind of weighing on the side that the president should not have this authority, but I respect people with different opinions. I'm still trying to make up my mind on it, and we will see. I am not convinced, by the way, that the president will win in the Supreme Court, even though there is a conservative majority. We will see. We'll follow that court case very closely because we'll have huge ramifications on the executive branch power. The next thing I wanted to mention to you, and I mentioned this last week, but I want to repeat it. We have a new study at Unleashed Prosperity. It's a blockbuster study, and it shows that Trump's economic policies work. And what we showed in this study is that if you look at the income gains that were made by Americans with Trump's first term as president, so he was president from 2017 through 2020, and you compare his income gains for median income families with what happened under Biden, the average family gained $6,500. That's a median family, people in the exact middle, under Biden, but under Trump, but they only gained about $600 in income under Biden. In other words, 10 times greater income gains for the middle class. I'm not talking about Warren Buffett. I'm not talking about Bill Gates. I'm not talking about, the LeBron James of the world. I'm talking about middle class people at a $6,500 gain. Plus, that was pre-tax. Don't forget the average family also got about a $2,000 tax cut on their income. So they saved about $8,000 and they gained $8,000 under Trump. Those are huge numbers. Here's another amazing statistic. If you look at the 4 years that Trump was president, you had a $6,500 increase in incomes for the middle class. If you look at the 8 years that Obama was president, 8 years from 2009 to 2016, and then you look at the 4 years that Biden was president from 2021 to 2024, and you add the income gains over those entire 12 years, those gains were slightly smaller over 12 years than what Trump gave us in 4 years. So Trump's policies help the middle class. I'm sick and tired of people saying Trump only cares about rich people. It is not true. The middle class and even low income people saw big gains under Trump. Final point I want to make. You're following this issue about whether Trump can bring in federal troops into the cities and so on, and I'm a little uneasy about it. I do agree that he did the right thing in Washington, D.C., because it's our federal city. Should he bring in troops in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago? I'm not so sure that makes sense. I'm a little uneasy about it. I know people have different opinions, but we do know that bringing in those federal troops into Washington, D.C., it did cut crime, folks. It did cut down on the muggings and the shootings and the rapes and the armed robberies and all of these things. So it did make Washington, D.C. safer. Thank you, Donald Trump, for doing that. It's a question of whether he can do it in cities that are not our federal city. Shouldn't the states be responsible for that? I believe in states' rights, so I think probably true. Now, the issue here that is interesting is Democrats are saying, why are you only bringing in the federal troops in blue states and not red states? Because there are a number of cities in red states like Memphis and St. Louis and Houston that have high crime rates. And so they're saying, see, it's not just a red state, blue state thing. It's just, the size of the city and so on. And here's what I want to tell you folks, and this is important. It is true there are a lot of red states with cities that have high crime rates. That is true. There's a high crime rate in Birmingham, Alabama. There's as I just said, there's a high crime rate in St. Louis. Memphis is one of the highest crime areas in the country, and it is in Tennessee, which is a deep red state. Here's my point. It's not a red state, blue state thing. It's a red city, blue city thing. In other words, crime is high in any city that has a lot of Democrats and a lot of liberals running their city. New York is run by Democrats. Los Angeles is run by Democrats. Birmingham, Alabama is running by Democrats. Memphis is run by Democrats. Houston is run by Democrats. You don't find too many cities in America, big cities, where you have Republican leadership. You do have some. And by the way, I'm not a rah-rah Republican. The point I'm making is when progressive liberals take over an area, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Los Angeles, whether it's Philadelphia, they destroy the city. That's just what they do. That's what progressives do. Now, I know I'm going to get some pushback on that, but the fact is crime rates are much lower in cities that are run by Republicans and cities with Republican residency rather than Democratic residency. Maybe that's because Democrats are poor. I don't know the reason. I think it's because Democrats tend to be soft on crime. You've got Johnson in Chicago who won't even, it's all these root causes and it's because we have racism that we have crime. No, it isn't. It's because you won't get the criminals off the street. Brandon Johnson, get the criminals off the streets and prosecute them, and you'll bring crime down. It's not complicated. This is what Rudy Giuliani did in New York when he was mayor. And I know, Rudy is no saint, but he did reduce crime dramatically, and he rebuilt the city. And don't forget, when you have high crime in an area, you drive businesses out, you drive employers out, you drive upper income families out, and all you're left is poverty and joblessness and welfare and crime. And so fighting crime is a way to stimulate the economy. And that is what Republican governors and Republican mayors do, not so much Democrats. So Democrats, if you want to help your city, fight crime and put the criminals in jail. That is my take on this stuff, folks. This is the More Money Show. We will be right back. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Now we get to our economics and politics section of the show, and I have two of the best in the business. David Malpass, the former president of the World Bank, a former member of the Treasury Department under Donald Trump in his first term, and one of the smartest guys I know about what is happening in capital markets and with the economy around the country. And Joel Griffith, who is with Advancing America Freedom, one of the senior policy analysts there. Gentlemen, thank you for joining. David, I think a lot of our listeners are concerned about the direction of the economy. Some of the economic signals are pointing north, and some of them seem to be pointing south. Can you kind of where do you stand on this? I read in the Wall Street Journal that a lot of economists are worried about a recession. Should we be worried?
Yeah. Hi, Steve. So growth is going to be important going forward, and there is some slowdown now, though I think more of what's going on is rapid change within the economy. And so that's hard for economists to pick up on. You've got the big change in the taxes where the new bill makes permanent the advantages in the tax code on expensing, and that is kicking in. You've also got Yep. And so improvements in the energy sector and electricity, which are going to be so important across the board. The electricity grid has to be upgraded. So all of that work is in front of us. And I think it's moving along. But right now, the jobs number will, reflect the change going on in the economy.
Yes. Yep. And so are you... What is your just general advice to investors who are getting nervous? And you see, by the way, in some of these surveys, David, consumers are getting a little worried about the economy.
Consumers are under pressure because the interest rates are high, and they're looking at the change going on and have some worries about the future. I think they're also, though, looking at the opportunities. When you look at artificial intelligence, for example, that's going to begin improving lots of people's jobs because some of the grunt work can be moved into more human sectors. People look at it and say, well, I'm worried that I'm going to lose my job to technology. Historically, people gain jobs from technology. So I think that will take time, and it's big change, positive change going on.
So, Joel Griffith, what do you think in terms of the health of the economy right now? Should people be nervous? Should they be worried about their jobs? We're seeing a little bit of slowdown in the labor market, but what is your take?
Yeah, I'm quite concerned with economic growth going forward. We just had, of course, the second quarter economic numbers come in, and those appear decent on the surface. But if you look at the overall growth over the first half of the year, we're right around 1.4%. That's a market slowdown from last year, and we shouldn't be too surprised by that. The tariffs are beginning to have an impact, not just on consumers with prices now heating up, but it's also having a big impact on businesses as well. It's put in place a lot of uncertainty. If you look at gross private direct investment, that actually dipped by 15% last quarter, and that's not annualized. That's a one-quarter significant dip. And look, the one big beautiful bill certainly was a major achievement for President Trump and conservatives in Congress in terms of immediate expensing for businesses. But if you're a small business and you need a new piece of machinery, and that's, say, $1 million, the tariff impact of that can easily be $300,000 on that piece of equipment, and that completely that actually outweighs the tax advantage of being able to immediately expense it. So there are some troubling signs. The two on the jobs market, we saw manufacturing jobs decline by about 20,000 over the first half of the year, and the number of job openings is roughly equivalent now to the number of people unemployed, and that's the lowest that ratio has been in over a decade. So there's some troubling signs, and I'm hopeful the administration gets back to focusing on deregulation, continuing to open up the energy markets, and hopefully the recent court decision on the tariffs will give the administration cover to drop those tariffs in the near future.
So, David, I think Joel makes some important points. We're seeing kind of conflicting directions from the Trump administration. On the one hand, that you guys are both right that the tax bill has been an enormous stimulus for the economy and the savings from deregulation and energy production. On the other hand, Joel is right. I'm hearing from a lot of middle-sized manufacturers, David, that their costs are really rising, that they're having problems with their supply chains because of some of these tariffs on things like aluminum, copper, steel, and so on. So how do you unsort all these things?
I'll mention several things that are important into the future, because a lot of people think about it. What have you done for me lately? So
right.
Don't look back. Look forward. One would be if there's another tax bill. I think the capital gains tax rate is too high.
Yes.
One is on crypto. So we haven't seen the benefits yet within the payment system. I think the Federal Reserve has to be more on top of that and create an enabling environment for crypto dominance for the U.S. dollar. And there's been some legislation on that. I think more is needed. Financial regulatory policy is really important. I work every day with companies that are smaller businesses that look for working capital. That means the loans, the loans that companies need to hold more inventory, more accounts receivable to buy a machine, and those are just too expensive right now. So I think going forward, if the Federal Reserve can wake up a little bit and there can be lower rates and that can help defend the dollar and make the U.S. attractive, that all will help.
So one of the big issues that by the way, that was David Malpass, former president of the World Bank and a former high-level official in the Treasury Department under Donald Trump's first term. So one of the issues that is a big question mark, of course, in the economy right now is what is going to happen with the tariffs because of the federal judge's ruling basically saying that these tariffs are invalid. It now goes to potential. It looks like it's going to the Supreme Court. I agree with Trump that this is going to be a momentous decision by the Supreme Court. I know neither of you are necessarily lawyers, but I'm on the fence on this one about which way that the court should decide. David, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts about this upcoming decision about whether the Congress can delegate this taxing authority to the president?
I would rephrase the question there, Steve. If the IEPA authority, which is the one that was ruled on Friday, is not upheld, then the administration will use other trade authorities. So I think it's pretty clear from a directional standpoint that the U.S. is intent on bringing manufacturing back home, and that means changing in the trade environment. So I don't know the legal answer for what the Supreme Court will do, but I think the imperative of changing the trade direction is going to be there regardless.
Yeah. So, Joel, this is going to be a big court decision. I find myself, my own opinion is that I'm not a big fan of tariffs, but I do like these trade deals that Trump has engineered, and he's going to lose that leverage if he loses the Supreme Court case. But what is your take on this?
I'm not currently practicing law, but I was a lawyer in my past
life. That's true.
But really, this comes down to basic constitutional law. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 gives Congress the exclusive ability to, quote, lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. I believe this is a slam dunk case. It was a 7-4 decision the other day in the Court of Appeals. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think this is going to be either 7, 8, or 9-0 decision in the Supreme Court. This should be a clear-cut case. And not only has Congress not delegated to the president the power to levy these tariffs under IEPA. IEPA doesn't even mention tariff power. Congress does not have the constitutional power to delegate that role, that responsibility. This is an exclusive power to the United States Congress. They could not delegate it to the president. even if they try to. This is a basic separation of powers issue. And as concerned as I am about the economic impacts of the tariffs, and I think these are severe, I'm even more concerned about the separation of powers. Look, if the president has the power to declare a national emergency of some sort in order to levy tariffs on coffee from Brazil or automobiles from Germany, a future president of the left could say, hey, it's a national climate emergency. And we know they were talking about this during the Biden-Harris administration, talking about a national climate emergency. Imagine a future president AOC or Elizabeth Warren declaring a climate emergency and putting in place 100% tariff on gas-powered automobiles, or 200% tariff for that matter. So I think it's important to get this right.
So, David, you mentioned the fact that Trump has struck some pretty important trade deals so far. I like what he got with Europe. I like what he's gotten with Canada. I mean, his goal is to try to bring the tariffs that are imposed on the United States down. So if I understand you correctly, you think that even if Trump loses this case, that he will still be able to move forward with this trade agenda? Or what is your take on that?
I don't want to presuppose the outcome of the Supreme Court.
I don't know either. Right.
The Congress has delegated quite a bit to the president to take care of the economy in this area. So that's the Section 232, which is the national security but part of the law, the Section 301, which is clearly applicable to some of the trade deals and partners that the U.S. is working with within the trade deals. So my point is simply that I think it's a clear goal of the U.S. to have more manufacturing. That goes into the tax bill and the expensing of equipment and of some facilities. So these are important positive changes going on for the U.S. They'd be helped, I think, by the interest rates. The interest rates in the U.S. are way higher than in Europe and Japan, and it doesn't make sense given the health of the economy. So I think there can be lower interest rates as part of this and still comply very much with this high priority on affordability, on the Fed's dual mandate, price stability and full employment. Those can all be met. They're not being met now.
So that leads in, by the way, I think this discussion has been a good one because it shows the kind of conflicting views that people have on this important court decision that's coming up. But I want to change direction a little bit and head to where you were what you were just talking about, David. You are an expert on the Federal Reserve Board. You could very easily be on the Federal Reserve Board in sometime in the next 6 months. Trump is going to have a couple of new openings, it looks like, or maybe even the chairman. You'd certainly be one of the people I would trust having control of our monetary policy. What if you were the Fed chairman right now, David, and you had this big meeting that's coming up in a week or two? What would you be advocating right now in terms of interest rate policy and Fed policy?
Steve, I don't want to go with the preface of if you were, but because I don't expect that. And well,
I know you're on the short list, David, so I'm not going to write you off. But anyway, go ahead.
The importance for the U.S., I think, is to find a way that the dollar can be the reserve currency for a long time and recognize that if you do that, then you get lower inflation, you get affordability, and you meet the price stability. And you can do that by defending the dollar. So that should be explicit. The Fed, oddly, never
hold on, David. Hold on.
Yeah,
because you're just
too many.
Hold on. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here. When you say defending the dollar, what exactly does that mean?
That means the dollar 10 years, 30 years, 50 years from now will hold its value so that people can, with confidence, own U.S. bonds. Right now, they're worried that won't be the case, so they charge a higher yield for U.S. bonds. That can be fixed, I think, overnight by stating the intention to create price stability by having the dollar hold value.
I think that's a great idea. I love that. And I think you're right. That would save the U.S. Treasury probably hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions, of borrowing costs. So it's fantastic
idea. I think over 10 years, it'd be in the trillions, maybe.
Wow. Okay, Joel, what do you think?
Well, I agree. Preserving the value of the dollar should be utmost important. And it's important to remember that over the first half of this year, the U.S. dollar lost 13% of its value relative to other currencies. This is the steepest first half of the year decline since 1973. And unfortunately, one of the folks that is on the short list to be on the Federal Reserve Board is an economics advisor to the administration, Stephen Moran, who has been on the record calling for a weaker dollar.
Right.
So I think it's important that we put in place the right person on the board who understands the value of the dollar, not just because we want to be able to travel abroad and have our dollar stretched, but having our dollar strong means that we're able to get better deals on the goods that we're buying from our trading partners. Yep. And it also means that we're able to have lower interest rates on the federal debt, which at $32 trillion plus, we can't afford these rates to be going up to 5-6%, which is what they're approaching right now.
So that is Joel Griffin, who is hold on just one sec. Joel Griffin with Defending American Freedom. And can you respond to what Joel just said, David, in terms of, we've only got about a minute and a half left, but I like the direction you're going in, David. I think Trump should take your advice and pick someone to head the Fed that will defend the dollar.
I wanted to come to quarrel with Joel. So Steve Moran, I think, is well qualified and has made very clear that there's a lot to economics, and that gets you straight into the trade importance and the long-term manufacturing. So I don't think it's fair to have shorthand for people. It's this entirety of wanting growth, that we want median income. That means real wages to be going up, and economics has been mixed up on that. So I guess my parting thought is we need to be re-examining economics to make it work better for people around the country, and Trump is doing that.
Well, it's a great point, David. And, our new study shows that in the first term, Trump increased real median income by $6,500. And if you include the $2,000 tax cut per family, it was an $8,000 increase. And so far this year, it's already up $1,000 per family. So Trump is, I think, really focused on that. What I've learned from you two gentlemen, we want a strong, stable dollar. We want as much free trade as we can get. We want deregulation. We want to promote American energy, and we love the tax cut. And the reason I have you guys on is because I agree with you. So thanks so much. That's, of course, the great Joel Griffith and the great David Malpass. Thanks, guys, and we'll be right back. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful first weekend of professional football. Starts on Sunday. So U.S. Open is on Sunday. What a great weekend this is for sports, and I love sports. I wanted to mention in the close of this hour that there's an interesting study done. As most of you who are regular listeners to the More Money Show, and thanks again for joining, you know that I am obsessing about low birth rates in America. I think it's a big problem. We need young people to get married. We need to have them be fertile and multiply. That's what keeps the human species going. Everybody talks about endangered species. Human beings are going to be an endangered species unless young people start having more babies. Used to be in my parents' generation, I'm one of 5 kids. Now couples barely have 2 kids. You rarely see couples with 4 or 5 kids anymore. You do have that. So my point is, young people are having too few kids. And now here's an interesting twist on this. There's a new study that has come out that shows in the United States and in developed countries, if you're self-identified as conservatives, you're likely to have 2 to 3 more kids than if you self-identify as a progressive. That's interesting, isn't it? In other words, progressives are not being fruitful and multiplying, but conservatives are. So conservatives on average have 2.5 kids, and progressives on average have 1 kid. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. Maybe, progressives are the ones who are going to become an endangered species. It's also true, by the way, even in the developing countries, where the average woman who is a progressive has 2 kids, but the average who is a conservative has 3. So my point is, for some reason, progressives don't want to have children. They don't want to get married. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the whole gay rights thing, that maybe they're concerned about their gender. But we as conservatives have to outnumber them by continuing to have babies. Okay. So I know most of the people listening to this show are probably in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s, but tell your kids, come on, get out there, start having kids. Making babies is fun, right? And it also makes the economy wholesome and productive and profitable. Okay, folks, so that's my message today. Let's start having more babies in America, because they're the greatest asset of all, the human being and Americans. And we lead the world, so we need more Americans. Okay? See ya. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.